All right, ladies, let's keep the momentum going. You've got the spark, those four words, I admire something about you, that can light up a man's heart like a Tesla coil firing at full blast. But now, let's dig into the why. Why do these words hit so hard? Why do they make a guy like me, or any man who's out there grinding, dreaming, or just trying to keep it together, feel like he's been seen for the first time in years? Buckle up, because we're about to go deep into the machinery of a man's soul, not the shiny exterior, but the raw, humming engine that drives him. And trust me, this is where the real magic happens. Picture this: a man's life is like a rocket launch. On the surface, it's all fire and thunder, a spectacle of power and precision. You see the flames, the roar, the climb to the stars. But what you don't see is the millions of tiny components working in sync, the fuel lines, the guidance systems, the redundancies built to handle failure. That's what's going on inside a man like me. The world sees the launches, the companies I've built, the headlines, the crazy bets on the future. But what keeps the whole thing from crashing? It's the hidden engine, the part nobody talks about, the part most men don't even show themselves. And when you as a woman can tap into that engine with those four words, you're not just admiring the launch, you're seeing the system that makes it possible. You're seeing him. Let's get one thing straight. Men aren't born with walls around their hearts. We build them piece by piece because the world doesn't give us much choice. Think about it. From the time we're kids, we're thrown into a pressure cooker. Society tells us our worth is tied to what we can do, what we can achieve, how much we can carry without buckling. I remember being a teenager, coding late into the night, dreaming up ideas that sounded insane even to me. And you know what I heard? That's cute, Elon, but grow up, get a real job. The message was clear. If you're not producing, you're not enough. Every man gets some version of this. Maybe it's a dad saying, toughen up, don't cry. Maybe it's a coach yelling, push harder, don't be weak. Maybe it's a boss who only cares about your numbers, not your effort. Over time, that stuff sticks. It becomes code running in the background of our minds. Hide your doubts, bury your fears, show the world you're unbreakable. But here's the truth: nobody tells you that code doesn't make us stronger, it makes us lonelier. Every man, no matter how successful, carries a quiet weight, a fear that if he shows the cracks, the whole mission fails. For me, it's the pressure of knowing millions of people are counting on my companies to deliver. It's the fear that one wrong move could tank a dream I've spent decades building. For another guy, it might be the stress of paying the bills or the worry that he's not the father, husband, or son he wants to be. We don't talk about it. We don't sit around swapping stories about our insecurities over coffee. We deflect, we joke, we change the subject. But deep down, we're starving for someone to see past the output and into the effort, past the results, and into the heart. That's where you come in. When you say, I admire something about you, you're not just throwing out a compliment. You're cutting through the noise of a world that only cares about what a man can produce. You're telling him, I see the fight you're fighting, even when you don't win. I see the grit, the heart, the you behind the hustle. And let me tell you, that's like giving a guy oxygen after he's been holding his breath for years. It's not about stroking his ego, it's about validating his existence. It's about saying, you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be the richest, the strongest, or the most successful. You're enough right now, as you are. Now, let's talk about what makes this so powerful. There's a reason these words hit harder than I love you or you're amazing. Don't get me wrong, those are great, but love can feel broad, almost expected. And amazing can sound like you're praising the highlight reel, not the man behind it. I admire something about you is different. It's specific, it's intentional. It's like aiming a laser at the core of who he is. When you say it, you're not just admiring his actions, you're admiring his character, his resilience, his quiet strength. For a guy like me, who spent years being judged by metrics, stock prices, launch success rates, production targets, that kind of recognition is like a cold drink of water in the middle of a desert. It's rare and it's life-changing. Let's break it down. Men at their core need three things to feel safe enough to let you in. First, respect. Not the kind where you nod and smile to keep the peace, but the kind that says, I see your strength, not just in what you do, but in who you are. Respect is the foundation. Without it, nothing else works. Second, validation. We need to know we're enough not because we hit a home run or landed a deal, but because our effort, our heart matters. And third, safety. Not physical safety, but the kind where we can show you our doubts, our fears, and not where you'll laugh, judge, or compare us to someone else. When you say, I admire something about you, you're hitting all three. You're saying, I respect your core, I validate your struggle, and I'm a safe place for you to be real. Here's a story from my own life, not one you'll read in the papers. A while back, I was in the middle of a brutal stretch. SpaceX had a string of tough launches, Tesla was fighting production hell, and I was sleeping on the factory floor, trying to keep the whole thing from falling apart. I was running on fumes, maybe 4 hours of sleep a night, and the world was screaming at me to deliver. One evening, someone close to me, let's just say it was a woman who mattered, looked at me, not with pity or frustration, but with this quiet intensity. She said, I admire how you keep betting on yourself, even when it's you against the world. That's what makes you different. No fluff, no sugarcoating, just those words, straight to the point. I swear, it was like time stopped. For a moment, I wasn't the CEO, the dreamer, or the guy everyone was waiting to fail. I was just me, and someone saw it. That moment didn't fix the problems, but it gave me something to hold on to. It gave me strength to keep pushing. That's what you can do, ladies. You don't need to solve his problems or take away his stress. You just need to see him, really see him, not the guy who's got it all together, but the guy who's fighting like hell to keep it together. When you do that, when you say those words with sincerity, you're not just making him feel good for a minute, you're giving him fuel for the long haul. You're giving him a reason to keep going, not just for his mission, but for you. Now, let's talk about how this works in practice. You can't just throw these words out like confetti. Timing is everything. Say them when he's expecting praise, like after a big win or a flashy moment, and they'll feel hollow, like you're just cheering for the scoreboard. But say them in a quiet moment when he's not fishing for it, maybe when he's talking about a tough day or just doing something small, like helping a friend or tackling a problem, and they'll hit like a thunderbolt. Picture this. He's sitting across from you, maybe in a diner, maybe at home, and he's telling you about a moment when he felt like he didn't measure up. Most people would brush it off, say something generic like, you'll be fine, not you. You lean in, look him in the eyes, and say, I admire how you keep showing up, even when it feels like you're carrying the world. That's what makes you incredible. That's the moment he'll remember. That's the moment that plants you in his heart. And here's a pro tip, make it specific. Don't just say, I admire you. That's too vague, like telling me a rocket's cool without saying why. Point to something real. Maybe it's how he stays calm when everything's chaotic. Maybe it's the way he lights up when he talks about his passions, even if the world thinks they're crazy. For me, it might be, I admire how you see a future no one else can and keep fighting for it, even when it's lonely. Whatever it is, tie it to his character, not his resume. That's what makes it stick. This isn't about flattery or playing games. I'm not here for that. I'm too busy trying to get humanity to Mars. This is about building something real. When you say those words, you're not just giving him a pat on the back, you're giving him a mirror to see the best parts of himself, the parts he's forgotten or buried. You're saying, I see the man behind the mission, and he's enough. That's the kind of connection that doesn't just spark, it burns bright, like a rocket engine pushing through the atmosphere. And trust me, when a man feels that, he doesn't just fall for you. He builds with you, he fights for you, he stays. We're not done yet. We're going to dive deeper into how you can use these words, how to make them land with maximum impact, and why they create a bond stronger than anything I've ever engineered. Stay with me, because this is about more than words. It's about changing the way you connect forever. All right, ladies, we're deep in the mission now, and I'm not slowing down. You've got the key, those 4 words. I admire something about you that can unlock a man's heart faster than a Tesla Roadster hitting 60 miles per hour. You know why they work. They tap into the hidden engine of a man's soul, the part he's spent years shielding from the world. But here's where we shift gears. Knowing the words is one thing. Using them right, that's a whole different ballgame. This isn't about tossing out a compliment and hoping it sticks. It's about precision, intention, and understanding the art of connecting with a man without pushing him away. Let's dive into how you make those words land like a starship touching down on a Martian pad, smooth, deliberate, and unforgettable. First off, let's talk about what not to do. I've seen too many people, good people, with good intentions crash and burn because they try too hard. You know what I'm talking about. You're texting him nonstop, asking why he's quiet, or dropping I love you bombs every 5 minutes, thinking it'll crack him open. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. It's like trying to force a rocket launch before the fuel's ready. You're just going to blow up the pad. Men, especially guys like me who are wired to keep moving, don't respond to pressure. We shut down, we pull back, not because we don't care, but because it feels like a trap. It's like the world's already got us in a vice grip, measuring our every move, and now you're adding more weight? Nah, that's not the way. The path to a man's heart isn't through a battering ram. It's through patience, subtlety, and showing him you're a safe place to land. Here's the deal. Men like me, we're used to operating in high stakes environments. My days are filled with decisions that could make or break a company, maybe even humanity's shot at the stars. Every choice is scrutinized, every failure amplified. So when someone comes at us with demands for emotional openness like, why don't you talk about your feelings? Or just tell me what's wrong, it feels like another test we're not ready to pass. We're already juggling a dozen missions. We don't need another one. But when you approach with those four words said with calm, genuine warmth, it's like you're offering a moment of zero gravity. No pressure, no judgment, just a chance to breathe. That's when we start to open up, not because you demanded it, but because you made it safe. Let's talk about timing, because this is where the magic happens. You can have the perfect words, but if you drop them at the wrong moment, they're about as useful as a rocket without a guidance system. The best time to say, I admire something about you, isn't when he's riding high, basking in some big win. Sure, it's tempting to praise him when he's just closed a deal or fixed something impossible, but that's when he's expecting it. It feels like you're cheering for the scoreboard, not the player. Instead, aim for the quiet moments, the ones where he's not performing, not trying to impress. Maybe he's sitting on the couch talking about a problem at work, or maybe he's just staring out the window, lost in thought. That's your window. That's when you lean in, look him in the eyes, and say something like, I admire how you keep your cool when everything's falling apart. That's what makes you special. It's unexpected, it's real, and it hits him right where he lives. Why does this work? Because men are wired to notice authenticity. We spend our lives navigating a world that's often fake people saying what they think we want to hear, or worse, criticizing us when we don't measure up. I've had plenty of folks tell me I'm inspiring when Tesla's stock is up, but where are they when I'm sleeping on the factory floor trying to fix a production line? The ones who stick around, who see the grind, and still say, I admire how you don't quit, even when it's brutal. Those are the ones who matter. Those are the ones who get through. When you say those words in a moment when he's not expecting praise, it's like you're seeing the real him, not the version he's projecting to the world. That's what makes him pause, look at you, and feel something he hasn't felt in a long time. Connection. Now, let's get practical. How do you make this happen without it feeling forced? First, you've got to observe him not in a creepy surveillance way, but in a way that shows you're paying attention. Men don't always say what's going on inside, but we drop hints. Maybe he's talking about a tough call yet to make it work, or maybe you notice how he always steps up for his friends, even when he's stretched thin. Those are your clues. Pick one thing that stands out, something that shows his character, not just his results. For example, don't say, I admire how you fix that car. That's about the task. Instead, try, I admire how you tackle problems with so much focus, it's like you're solving a puzzle nobody else can see. See the difference? You're pointing to the man, not the mission. You're seeing the why, not just the what. Here's another tip. Pair the words with presence. Words alone are powerful, but when you add a touch of warmth, a hand on his arm, a steady gaze, a soft smile, you're amplifying the signal. It's like adding a booster rocket to a launch. I remember a moment years ago when I was in the thick of a crisis at SpaceX. We just had a launch failure, and I was beating myself up, thinking I'd let the team down. Someone I cared about didn't try to fix it or give me a pep talk. She just sat next to me, put her hand on mine, and said, I admire how you take every failure and turn it into a lesson. That's what makes you unstoppable. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she looked at me, like she believed it with every fiber of her being. That moment didn't erase the failure, but it gave me something to hold on to. It reminded me I wasn't alone in the fight. This is where a lot of women trip up, and I'm going to be blunt because that's how I roll. Too many try to force their way in. They push, they prod, they ask a million questions. Why are you so quiet? What's wrong? Just talk to me. I get it, you're trying to help. But to a guy, that feels like an interrogation, not an invitation. It's like trying to hack into a system that's already on lockdown. The harder you push, the tighter the walls go up. I've been there when someone's trying to fix me. I climb up faster than a spaceship sealing its airlock. But when someone approaches with patience, with those words said softly, in a moment when I'm not expecting it, that's when the walls start to crumble. That's when I feel safe enough to let you in. Let's talk about why safety matters so much. Men like me, we're not just fighting external battles, building companies, chasing goals, or keeping the lights on. We're fighting internal ones too. There's a voice in our heads, one we don't talk about, that says, you're not enough. You're not doing enough. Don't let them see you slip. For me, it's the fear that if I fail, I'm not just letting myself down, I'm letting down everyone who believes in the mission. Every man has his version of this. Maybe it's the guy who's worried he's not providing enough for his family. Maybe it's the guy who's scared he's not living up to his own dreams. When you say, I admire something about you, you're silencing that voice, even if just for a moment. You're saying, I see your fight and it's enough. That's not just a compliment, it's a lifeline. Here's where it gets real, ladies. This isn't about playing a game or trying to win him. I'm not here for manipulation. I'm too busy trying to build a future on Mars. This is about building something authentic, something that lasts longer than a news cycle or a rocket launch. When you use these words the right way, you're not just making him feel good. You're creating a bond that's stronger than any material I've ever engineered. You're showing him he doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to have all the answers, doesn't have to carry the world alone. And when a man feels that from you, he doesn't just open up, he invests, he builds with you, he fights for you, not because he has to, but because you've given him something the world rarely does, a place to be human. So here's your mission, and I'm giving it to you straight. Don't just memorize these words, live them. Watch the man in your life. See the moments when he's not trying to impress, when he's just being himself. Maybe he's helping someone without expecting thanks, or maybe he's sharing a small piece of his world, a dream, a worry, a hope. That's your moment. Say the words, make them specific, make them real. Let him feel your belief in him. You'll see it in his eyes, the way they soften, the way his guard drops, the way he starts to let you in. That's the start of something bigger than you can imagine. We've got more to cover: how to make these words part of your everyday, how they change the dynamic of your connection, and why they're the key to a love that lasts. Stay with me, because we're just getting started. Ladies, we're in the thick of it now, and I'm not here to waste your time with fluff. You've got the key, those four words, I admire something about you, and you know why they hit like a perfectly timed rocket burn. You've learned how to use them with precision, picking the right moment to make a man feel seen, not just for his wins, but for the fight he's fighting inside. Now, let's take it to the next level. This isn't just about saying the right thing at the right time. It's about building something bigger, a connection so strong it could withstand a Martian dust storm. This is about turning a spark into a fire that doesn't burn out, about creating a bond that makes a man like me, or any man, want to show up for you in ways you never thought possible. Let's dive into how these words become the foundation for a relationship that's not just good, but legendary. Here's the deal. Relationships, like rockets, aren't built on luck or shortcuts. You don't get to Mars by hoping the math works out. You engineer every piece, test it under pressure, and make damn sure it holds up. Same goes for connecting with a man's heart. Those four words are your launch pad, but they're not the whole mission. They're the start of something deeper, something that requires you to show up consistently, authentically, and with a kind of courage that says, I'm here for the real stuff, not just the shiny moments. When you use those words, you're not just making him feel good for a second, you're laying the groundwork for trust, for loyalty, for a partnership that can take on the universe. Let's talk about what happens when you say, I admire something about you, and you keep showing up with that same energy. You're not just opening a door, you're building a bridge. A man like me, or any guy who's out there grinding, doesn't give his heart lightly. We're used to keeping it locked down, not because we're cold, but because the world's taught us that vulnerability is a risk. Every time we let someone in, we're betting against a lifetime of conditioning that says, don't show weakness, don't let them see you falter. But when you say those words and you back them up with actions that prove you mean it, you're not just asking him to take a leap, you're giving him a reason to trust the landing. Think about it like this. Building a company like SpaceX or Tesla isn't about one big moment. It's about thousands of small decisions, each one reinforcing the last until you've got something that can fly to the stars or change how the world drives. A relationship is the same. Those words are your first step, but what makes them powerful is what comes next. It's the way you keep noticing him, the way you keep seeing the man behind the mission. Maybe he's telling you about a setback, something that didn't go as planned. Instead of brushing it off or trying to fix it, you pause, you listen, and you say something like, I admire how you don't let a failure define you. You just keep moving forward. That's not a one-off compliment. That's you showing him you're paying attention, that you're in his corner, that you're not going anywhere. Here's where it gets real. Men crave consistency as much as we crave respect. We need to know you're not just here for the high-flying moments when the rocket's soaring and the headlines are glowing. We need to know you'll stick around when the launch fails, when the factory's a mess, when we're doubting ourselves. I've had moments more than I'd like to admit where I've wondered if I'm crazy for chasing the dreams I chase. Moments where I'm staring at a spreadsheet or a failed test thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I can't pull this off? In those moments, the world feels like it's closing in. But when someone looks at me, not with pity or impatience, but with quiet strength, and says, I admire how you keep going, even when it feels impossible. It's like a reset button for my soul. It reminds me I'm not alone, that someone sees the fight, not just the scoreboard. That's what you're building when you use these words consistently. You're not just making him feel good, you're creating a space where he can be real without fear. And let me tell you, that's rarer than a perfect orbit. Most men, including me, live in a world where we're judged by what we deliver. Miss a deadline, lose a deal, or crash a prototype, and suddenly you're nobody. But when you show up with those words and you keep showing up, you're telling him, I'm not here for the results. I'm here for you. That's the kind of trust that turns a spark into a flame, the kind that makes a man want to build a life with you, not just a moment. Now, let's talk about how this changes him. When a man feels seen not for his output, but for his heart, it does something to him. It's like upgrading the software in a neural network. He starts to shift. He doesn't just open up, he starts to invest. He starts to share more, not because you're demanding it, but because he wants to. I've seen it in my own life when someone consistently shows me they see the guy behind the headlines, the guy who's fighting to make a dent in the universe. I start to let them in. I share the doubts I don't tell anyone, the dreams I'm scared to admit, the pieces of me I've kept locked away, not because I'm weak, but because I trust they won't use it against me. That's what you're doing when you use these words with intention. You're building a foundation where he feels safe to be more than a provider or a performer. Here's a practical tip. Don't make it a one and done. If you say, I admire something about you once and never again, it's like launching a rocket and forgetting to fuel it for the next trip. Keep noticing him. Keep finding those moments where his character shines through. Maybe it's the way he handles a tough conversation with grace, or the way he stays patient when everyone else would lose it. Whatever it is, call it out. Not every day, don't overdo it, because that starts to feel like flattery, and men can smell inauthenticity a mile away. But when you see something real, something that makes you pause and think, damn, that's who he is, say it. Say, I admire how you always find a way to stay true to yourself, even when it's hard. It's like adding another layer to the bridge you're building, making it stronger, more resilient. Let's get personal for a second. I remember a time when I was neck deep in trying to get Tesla through what we now call production hell. We were bleeding cash, the media was tearing us apart, and every day felt like a fight to keep the company alive. I was exhausted, running on coffee and stubbornness. One night, someone I cared about didn't try to cheer me up or tell me it'd be okay. Instead, she looked at me and said, I admire how you pour your whole heart into this, even when it feels like it's breaking you. That's what makes you different. It wasn't a fix for the chaos, but it was a lifeline. It reminded me that someone saw the fight, not just the struggle. That's what kept me going, not just for Tesla, but for her. That's the power you have when you use these words consistently with heart. Here's another thing to understand. This isn't just about him. It's about you, too. When you show up with this kind of intention, you're not just building a connection, you're growing as a person. You're learning to see people, really see them in a way most don't. That's a skill, ladies, and it's one that'll make you stand out, not just in relationships, but in life. It's the same kind of focus I bring to engineering a rocket or designing a car. Pay attention to the details, find the truth in the chaos, and build something that lasts. When you practice this kind of observation, this kind of authenticity, you're not just changing him, you're changing yourself. You're becoming the kind of woman who doesn't just love, but inspires. One more thing before we move on, don't underestimate the ripple effect. When you make a man feel seen, it doesn't just stay between you two, it changes how he shows up in the world. A man who feels admired, who feels safe, doesn't just open up to you, he starts to carry himself differently. He's more confident, not in a cocky way, but in a way that says, I know who I am and someone believes in me. I've seen it in my teams at SpaceX and Tesla when people feel valued for who they are, not just what they do, they bring their best. The same goes for a man in a relationship. When you give him this kind of recognition, he doesn't just love you more, he becomes a better version of himself. And that, ladies, is how you build something that doesn't just last, but thrives. We're not stopping here. We're going to dive into how these words reshape the dynamic between you, how they create a partnership that's stronger than any challenge, and why they're the secret to a love that doesn't fade. Stay with me, this is where it gets epic. Ladies, we're pushing the boundaries now, and I'm not holding back. You've got the tools, those 4 words. I admire something about you, and you know how to wield them with precision, like a perfectly calibrated thruster on a starship. You understand why they work, how they cut through a man's armor to reach the heart he spent years protecting. You've learned to pick the right moment, to make it real, and to build a bridge of trust that's stronger than any rocket I've ever launched. But now, we're going to take this to a whole new orbit. This isn't just about sparking a connection, it's about rewiring the entire dynamic of your relationship. It's about turning those words into a force that transforms how you and he move through the world together, creating a love that doesn't just survive but thrives, like a colony on Mars built to outlast the toughest storms. Let's dive in and make it happen. Here's the big picture. When you say, I admire something about you, and you keep showing up with that energy, you're not just making a man feel good, you're changing the rules of the game. Most relationships run on autopilot. People fall into patterns, coasting on habit or chemistry, hoping it'll be enough. But I don't do autopilot. I don't build rockets that kind of work, and you shouldn't settle for a relationship that's just good enough. Those four words, when used with intention, are like rewriting the code of your connection. They shift the dynamic from transactional, where it's about what you both do for each other, to transformational, where you're both growing, evolving, and building something bigger than yourselves. Let's talk about what this shift looks like. When a man feels admired, not for his output, but for his core, something clicks inside him. It's like upgrading a neural network with new data. He starts to see you differently. You're not just a partner, a friend, or someone he cares about. You become his anchor, his safe harbor in a world that's constantly throwing curveballs. For a guy like me, who's spent years navigating the chaos of building companies that the world said couldn't exist, that kind of anchor is everything. I'm not talking about someone who just cheers me on or strokes my ego. I'm talking about someone who sees the man behind the mission, who gets why I'm fighting, and who makes me feel like I don't have to do it alone. When you use those words consistently, you're telling him, I'm with you, not just for the wins, but for the whole damn journey. That's when the dynamic changes, when he starts to see you as a partner in the truest sense, someone he wants to build a future with, not just share a moment. Here's where it gets interesting. This shift isn't just about him opening up, it's about how it changes you in his eyes. Men like me, we're drawn to people who inspire us to be better, not through pressure, but through belief. When you say, I admire something about you, and you point to something real like, I admire how you stay true to your vision, even when it's a lonely road, you're not just validating him. You're showing him you're the kind of woman who sees the big picture, who gets what drives him, who's not afraid to stand by his side when the going gets tough. That's rare, ladies. In a world full of noise, people chasing likes, clout, or superficial wins, you're the one who stands out. You're the one who makes him think, this is someone I can build with. This is someone who gets it. Let's break this down with a story. Years ago, during one of the darkest times at Tesla, we were on the brink. Production was a nightmare, the media was circling like vultures, and I was sleeping on the factory floor trying to keep the dream alive. Most people around me were either panicking or telling me to give up. But there was this one person, a woman who mattered, who didn't try to fix me or tell me what to do. Instead, one night when I was exhausted and questioning everything, she sat down next to me, looked me in the eyes, and said, I admire how you fight for what you believe in, even when it feels like you're the only one. That's why I believe in you. Those words didn't solve the production issues or silence the critics, but they did something bigger. They reminded me I wasn't alone. They gave me a reason to keep pushing, not just for Tesla, but for her. That's the kind of power you have when you use these words to shift the dynamic. You're not just supporting him, you're becoming part of his mission, part of his reason to keep going. Now, let's talk about how this changes the way you move together. When a man feels this kind of admiration, he doesn't just open his heart, he starts to invest in you the way I invest in a vision. And think about how I approach SpaceX or Neuralink. I don't just throw money at a problem and hope it works. I dive in, I obsess over the details, I commit to making it real. That's what happens when a man feels seen by you. He starts to pour himself into the relationship, not out of obligation, but because you've given him something worth fighting for. He starts to share more, not just his wins, but his fears, his dreams, the parts of himself he's kept locked away. He starts to see you as a partner in the deepest sense, someone he can trust with the messy, unpolished parts of his soul. This is where a lot of relationships miss the mark. Too many people, men and women, get stuck in a cycle of keeping score. I did this for you, so you owe me that. Or they lean on chemistry alone, thinking passion will carry them through. But chemistry fades, and scorekeeping kills trust. What lasts is a dynamic built on mutual respect, where both of you are pushing each other to be better, not through demands, but through belief. When you use those four words, you're setting the tone for that kind of dynamic. You're saying, I see you, I value you, and I'm here for the long haul. And when a man feels that, he doesn't just stay, he commits, he builds. He fights for you the way I fight for a future where humanity's living among the stars. Here's a practical tip. Make this part of how you show up every day, but don't overdo it. You don't need to say, I admire something about you every 5 minutes. That'll make it feel like a gimmick. And men can spot a gimmick faster than I can spot a design flaw in a rocket. Instead, weave it into your rhythm. Notice the small things he does, the moments when his character shines through. Maybe it's the way he handles a tough situation with calm, or the way he lights up when he's talking about something he loves. Call it out, but do it sparingly, like you're saving it for when it really counts. For example, if he's been grinding through a tough week, don't just say, "You're doing great." Say, "I admire how you keep your focus, even when everything's pulling you in a million directions." That's what makes you stand out. It's specific, it's real, and it shows you're paying attention to who he is, not just what he's doing. Let's talk about the ripple effect, because this is bigger than just you and him. When you create this kind of dynamic, it doesn't just change your relationship, it changes how he moves through the world. A man who feels admired for his core, who knows someone sees him for who he is, carries himself differently. He's not just chasing goals to prove something, he's chasing them because he knows someone believes in him. I've seen it in my teams at SpaceX and Tesla. When people feel valued for their effort, not just their output, they bring their A game, they take risks, they innovate, they push harder. The same thing happens in a relationship. When you give a man this kind of admiration, he doesn't just love you more, he becomes a better version of himself. He's more present, more engaged, more willing to show up for you in ways that matter. And here's the part that's just for you, ladies. This isn't just about him. When you practice this kind of intentional, authentic admiration, you're growing too. You're sharpening your ability to see people, not just their surface, but their soul. That's a superpower. It's the kind of skill that makes you a leader, a partner, a force in the world. It's the same mindset I bring to building companies. Look at the problem, see the truth, and build something that lasts. When you approach your relationship with that kind of clarity, you're not just building a connection, you're building a legacy. You're creating a love that doesn't just burn bright for a moment, but lights the way for years to come. We're not done yet. We're going to dive into how to keep this dynamic alive, how to make these words a part of your everyday without losing their power, and why they're the secret to a love that can withstand anything. Stay with me. This is where we make it unstoppable. Ladies, we're not just cruising now, we're accelerating toward escape velocity. You've got those 4 words, "I admire something about you," locked and loaded, and you know how they can rewire a relationship, turning it into something stronger than a starship hull. You've seen how they shift the dynamic, making a man like me or any man feel seen, valued, and ready to build a future with you. But here's where we get to the tricky part. How do you keep this fire burning without letting it fizzle out or, worse, turn into a wildfire that burns you both out? This isn't about a one-time launch. It's about sustaining a mission that lasts, like a colony on Mars that thrives for generations. Let's dive into how you make these words a living, breathing part of your connection without losing their power or making them feel like a routine checklist. Buckle up, this is about keeping the spark alive and making it unstoppable. First off, let's be clear. This isn't about turning those 4 words into a catchphrase you whip out every Tuesday at 6 p.m. That's not how it works. I don't run SpaceX by repeating the same launch sequence over and over without tweaking it. Every mission needs calibration, precision, and a reason to fire the engines. Same goes for your relationship. Those words, "I admire something about you," are powerful because they're rare, intentional, and tied to something real. If you start throwing them around like confetti at a product reveal, they'll lose their edge. They'll start to sound like flattery. And let me tell you, men like me can sniff out inauthenticity faster than a neural network spotting a data anomaly. The goal is to make these words a natural part of how you connect, not a script you recite to keep him happy. So, how do you do that? It starts with staying curious. Relationships, like engineering problems, require you to keep learning, keep observing, keep digging into the details. You don't just admire a man once and call it a day. You keep watching him, noticing the things that make him who he is. Maybe it's the way he stays calm when his boss is breathing down his neck, or the way he lights up when he's teaching his kid how to ride a bike. Those moments aren't always loud or flashy. They're often quiet, tucked away in the everyday grind, but they're gold. When you spot one and you say something like, "I admire how you always make time for the people you love, no matter how crazy your day is," you're not just complimenting him, you're showing him you're still paying attention, you're still invested in who he is, not just what he does. Here's a key principle: scarcity creates value. I learned this building companies. If you flood the market with too many cars or rockets, they stop feeling special. Same with admiration. If you're constantly praising him, it starts to feel like background noise. But if you save those words for moments that matter, when he's showing you a piece of his soul, or when he's quietly doing something that reveals his character, they hit like a perfectly timed booster ignition. Think about it like this. At SpaceX, we don't celebrate every single test. We celebrate the ones that push us closer to Mars. In your relationship, don't just admire him for existing. Admire him for the moments that show his heart, his grit, his uniqueness. Maybe he's telling you about a time he stood up for someone, or maybe you catch him working late to finish something he believes in. That's when you say, I admire how you stick to your principles, even when it's not easy. That's what makes you you. It's specific, it's real, and it lands deep. Let's talk about the long game because that's what I'm all about, building things that last, whether it's a company or a civilization on another planet. In a relationship, the long game means creating a rhythm where admiration becomes part of how you connect, but it doesn't lose its power. This isn't about saying the words every day, it's about creating a culture of mutual respect where you both see and lift each other up. For me, the people who've stuck with me through the chaos of Tesla or SpaceX aren't the ones who just cheer when things go well. They're the ones who see the vision, who get why I'm pushing so hard, and who call it out when it matters. In a relationship, that's what you're doing when you use these words thoughtfully. You're building a culture where he feels safe to be real, where he knows you're not just in it for the highlights, but for the whole damn mission. Here's a story to bring it home. A while back, I was in the middle of a brutal stretch with Neuralink. We were hitting roadblocks, the kind that make you question whether you're chasing a pipe dream. I was exhausted, second guessing myself, and feeling the weight of trying to connect human brains to machines. No big deal. One evening, someone close to me didn't try to pep talk me or tell me to relax. Instead, she sat down, looked at me with this quiet intensity, and said, I admire how you keep chasing ideas that scare everyone else because you believe they'll change the world. It wasn't just the words, it was the fact that she saw the why behind my madness. She wasn't admiring the outcome, she was admiring the drive. That moment didn't fix the roadblocks, but it gave me something to hold on to. It made me feel like I wasn't alone in the fight. That's what you're doing when you keep these words alive in your relationship. You're reminding him he's got a partner who sees the big picture. Now, let's talk about balance, because this isn't a one-way street. A relationship isn't just about you admiring him, it's about both of you growing, pushing each other to be better. When you create this culture of admiration, something amazing happens. He starts to mirror it back. A man who feels seen and valued doesn't just sit back and soak it up. He starts to see you more clearly. To He starts to notice the ways you show up, the ways you fight your own battles, the ways you make his world better. I've seen this in my own life. When someone believes in me, not just for what I build, but for why I build it, it makes me want to be better for them. It makes me want to show up in ways I didn't before, not because I have to, but because they've given me a reason to. That's the dynamic you're creating when you use these words thoughtfully, a partnership where both of you are lifting each other up, not just coasting on chemistry or habit. Here's a practical tip. Vary how you express admiration. Those four words are your foundation, but you don't have to say them the same way every time. Mix it up. Sometimes it's a quiet moment where you say, I admire how you always find a way to laugh even when things are tough. Other times, it's a note you leave him that says, I love how you never give up on what matters to you. Or maybe it's a quick text after a long day. Just wanted to say, I admire how you keep your word no matter what. Um, the point is to keep it fresh, keep it tied to who he is, and keep it authentic. Don't let it become a formula. Think of it like iterating on a design. Every time you say it, you're refining the connection, making it stronger, more resilient. Let's talk about the impact on you, because this isn't just about him. When you practice this kind of intentional admiration, you're not just building a relationship, you're building yourself. You're training yourself to see people deeply, to find the truth in their actions, to connect on a level most people never reach. That's a skill that goes beyond romance. It's the kind of mindset I bring to solving problems, whether it's building a rocket or digging a tunnel. It's about seeing the core of what matters and working from there. When you approach your relationship with that kind of clarity, you become a force, not just in love, but in life. You become the kind of woman who doesn't just inspire a man, but inspires everyone around her. Here's the kicker. This culture of admiration creates a feedback loop. The more you see him, the more he sees you. The more you lift him up, the more he wants to lift you up. It's like a fusion reactor. Once it starts, it keeps generating energy, powering both of you to be better, stronger, more connected. I've seen it in my teams. When people feel valued, they don't just work harder, they work smarter, they take risks, they dream bigger. In a relationship, it's the same. When you make a man feel admired for who he is, he doesn't just love you, he becomes your partner in the truest sense. He fights for you, not out of duty, but because you've given him something the world rarely does, a reason to believe in himself. We're not stopping here. We're going to dive into how to protect this dynamic from the chaos of everyday life, how to keep it strong when the world tries to pull you apart, and why these words are the secret to a love that doesn't just last, but changes everything. Stay with me, this is where we make it eternal. Ladies, we're not just cruising through the atmosphere anymore, we're in deep space, navigating the void, and this is where things get real. You've got those four words, I admire something about you, and you know how to use them to spark a connection, rewire the dynamic, and build a relationship that's stronger than a Tesla Cybertruck frame. You've learned to weave them into your life with intention, keeping the fire alive without letting it burn out. But here's the next challenge. How do you protect this spark in a world that's constantly throwing asteroids at you? Life's messy deadlines, stress, distractions, the endless noise of the modern world. How do you keep this connection thriving when everything else is trying to pull it apart? This is about shielding your bond like I shield a starship from re-entry heat because a love this powerful deserves to be bulletproof. Let's dive in and make it happen. The world out there is relentless. I know this better than most. Running companies like SpaceX or Neuralink isn't just a job, it's a gauntlet. Every day, there's a new crisis. A rocket test fails, a production line stalls, or the internet decides I'm the villain of the week. Men face their own versions of this chaos, whether it's a high stakes career, a family counting on them, or just the grind of keeping it together in a world that never stops demanding more. And you, ladies, you've got your own battles, work, dreams, responsibilities, all pulling you in a million directions. In the middle of that storm, it's easy for a relationship to get lost, for the spark you've built to flicker under the weight of life's noise. But here's the thing. A connection built on genuine admiration, on those four words, can withstand anything if you know how to protect it. Protecting the spark starts with understanding what you're up against. Life doesn't care about your relationship. It's like gravity, it'll pull you down unless you keep pushing back. For a man, the chaos often comes from the pressure to perform, to provide, to never show weakness. I've felt it. The weight of knowing thousands of jobs, billions of dollars, and humanity's shot at the stars depend on me not screwing up. Every man has his version of this. Maybe it's the fear of letting his family down or the stress of a job that's always asking for more. When that pressure builds, we retreat. We go quiet, not because we don't care, but because it's how we've been wired to cope. That's when the distance creeps in, when the connection you've worked so hard to build starts to feel like it's slipping. Here's where those four words become your shield. When the world's beating him down, when he's carrying that invisible weight, that's when your admiration can cut through the noise like a laser. But it's not about saying the words to fix him, that's a rookie mistake. You can't fix a man's stress any more than I can fix a rocket crash with a pep talk. Instead, it's about reminding him he's not alone in the fight. It's about saying, I admire how you keep standing tall, even when life's throwing punches. Those words don't erase the chaos, but they give him something to hold on to, a reminder that someone sees him, not just as a problem solver, but as a man worth believing in. That's what keeps the spark alive when everything else is trying to snuff it out. Let's get practical. Protecting this connection means being intentional, even when life's moving at a million miles an hour. You don't need grand gestures, those are overrated. Like thinking a flashy rocket launch is the whole mission. It's the small, consistent moves that matter. Picture this. He's had a brutal day. Maybe he's staring at his phone, lost in thought, or maybe he's venting about something that went wrong. Most people would jump in with advice or try to change the subject. Don't pause. Look at him. Say something like, I admire how you keep showing up, even when it feels like the deck's stacked against you. It's not about solving his problem, it's about showing him you see his strength, even in the mess. That moment becomes a lifeline, a reminder that he's got a partner who's in it for the long haul. Here's a story from my own life to drive this home. A while back, during one of the toughest stretches at Tesla, we were fighting to scale production while the world was betting against us. I was barely sleeping, living on the factory floor, and the stress was like a black hole, sucking everything in. One night, someone I cared about didn't try to cheer me up or tell me it'd all work out. Instead, she sat with me, quiet for a moment, then said, I admire how you take on the impossible, not because it's easy, but because you believe it's worth it. It was like a jolt of energy, not because it fixed the factory, but because it reminded me I wasn't carrying the weight alone. That's what you're doing when you use these words in the chaos. You're not just admiring him, you're anchoring him. Now, let's talk about protecting the spark from yourself because sometimes we're our own worst enemies. It's easy to get caught up in your own stress, your own battles, and start expecting him to be your rock 24/7. But here's the truth. Men aren't unbreakable, even if we act like it. When you're both stretched thin, it's tempting to lean on him harder, to demand he open up or fix your problems. Resist that urge. Instead, use those words to remind him you're a team. Say, I admire how you keep pushing through, and I'm here with you no matter what. That's not just a compliment, it's a pact. It's you saying, we're in this together and I've got your back. That's what keeps the connection strong when life's trying to tear it apart. Here's another key. Don't let the world's noise drown out your focus. Social media, work drama, the endless scroll of notifications, it's all designed to pull you away from what matters. I see it all the time. People get so caught up in the digital chaos, they forget to connect with the person right in front of them. Protect your spark by carving out space for real moments. Maybe it's a quiet coffee together, no phones, where you just talk. Maybe it's a walk where you notice something small about him, like how he always makes time for the people he cares about, and you call it out. I admire how you put others first, even when you're stretched thin. Those moments, small as they seem, are like reinforcing the hull of a spaceship. They keep your connection strong against the external pressures. Let's talk about the long-term payoff, because I'm all about thinking big. When you protect this spark, you're not just keeping the relationship alive, you're building something that can outlast anything. I don't build rockets for a single launch. I build them for a future where humanity's multiplanetary. In a relationship, it's the same. Every time you use those words to shield your connection, you're investing in a love that doesn't just survive the chaos, but thrives in it. You're creating a partnership where both of you feel seen, valued, and unstoppable, no matter what life throws at you. That's the kind of love that doesn't just last, it changes the game. It's the kind of love that makes a man want to fight for you, not because he has to, but because you've shown him you're worth every ounce of his heart. Here's a pro tip. Don't let routine kill the magic. Life has a way of turning even the best intentions into background noise. You've got to keep mixing it up, like iterating on a rocket design to make it better with every launch. Maybe one day you say the words in person with a hand on his shoulder. Another time you leave a note that says, I admire how you never let fear stop you from chasing what matters. Or maybe you send a text after a tough day. Just wanted to say, I admire your heart. It's what keeps me believing in us. The point is to keep it fresh, keep it tied to who he is, and keep it real. That's how you make sure the spark doesn't fade, even when the world's trying to pull you apart. And here's the part that's just for you. Protecting this spark isn't just about him, it's about you becoming the kind of woman who can navigate chaos with grace. When you practice this kind of intentional connection, you're not just building a relationship, you're building resilience. You're learning to stay focused on what matters, even when life's throwing curveballs. That's a skill that'll serve you everywhere, whether you're chasing your own dreams, leading a team, or just trying to make sense of the world. It's the same mindset I bring to solving impossible problems, see the truth, stay focused, and build something that lasts. When you protect this spark, you're not just saving your relationship, you're becoming a force. We're not done yet. We're going to dive into how to make this connection a legacy, how to turn these words into a love that doesn't just endure but inspires, and why this is the secret to a partnership that can change the world. Stay with me, this is where we make it legendary. Ladies, we're at the final frontier now, and I'm not talking about Mars, this is about something even bigger. You've got those four words, I admire something about you, and you've learned how to wield them like a master engineer, sparking a connection, rewiring the dynamic, and shielding it from the chaos of the world. You've built a bond that's stronger than any rocket I've ever designed, one that can withstand the pressures of life and keep burning bright. But this isn't just about keeping the fire alive today or tomorrow. This is about turning those words into a legacy, a love that doesn't just last but becomes a story worth telling, a force that inspires not just you and him, but everyone around you. This is about building something eternal, something that outlives the noise and changes the game forever. Let's close this out with a bang and make it legendary. Here's the truth. Great things aren't built by accident. Whether it's a company like Tesla, a mission to colonize Mars, or a relationship that stands the test of time, it takes vision, commitment, and a refusal to settle for anything less than extraordinary. Those four words are your starting point, but they're also your compass, guiding you toward a love that's not just good but transformative. When you use them with intention, consistently, and with a heart that sees the man behind the mask, you're not just creating moments, you're crafting a legacy. You're building a partnership that doesn't just survive the storms but becomes a beacon, showing the world what love can be when it's rooted in respect, trust, and unwavering belief in each other. Let's talk about what a legacy of love looks like. It's not about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. Those are for movies, not real life. I don't build rockets for Hollywood. I build them to change humanity's future. In a relationship, a legacy is about the quiet, powerful moments that add up over time. It's the way you look at him years from now and still find something new to admire. Maybe it's the way he's grown or the way he's faced challenges you never saw coming. It's the way he looks at you, knowing you've been his anchor through the chaos, and the way he's become yours. It's the stories you'll tell, not about the big wins or flashy moments, but about the times you saw each other's hearts and chose to keep showing up. Here's how those words become the foundation of that legacy. Every time you say, I admire something about you, and you tie it to something real, like I admire how you face every challenge head on, no matter how daunting, you're adding another layer to your connection. You're not just praising him, you're reinforcing a bond that grows stronger with every moment of recognition. Over time, those moments become the threads of your story together. They become the reason he trusts you with his deepest fears, the reason he fights for you, the reason your love doesn't just endure but evolves. It's like building a rocket. Every test, every tweak, every launch builds on the last until you've got something that can reach the stars. Let's get real for a second. I've spent my life chasing impossible dreams, electric cars when everyone said they'd flop, reusable rockets when the world laughed, neural interfaces when people called it science fiction. But the moments that stick with me aren't just the launches or the headlines. They're the times when someone saw the why behind my madness, the heart behind the hustle. One time during a particularly rough patch with SpaceX, when we were burning through cash and facing failure after failure, someone close to me didn't try to sugarcoat it or tell me to take a break. She looked at me, steady as a rock, and said, I admire how you keep believing in the impossible, even when it feels like the universe is against you. Those words didn't fix the rocket, but they became part of my story. They reminded me I wasn't alone, that someone saw the man behind the mission. That's what you're doing when you use these words over time. You're writing a story together, one that becomes a legacy. Here's a key piece. A legacy of love isn't just about you and him, it's about the impact you have on the world around you. When you build a relationship rooted in this kind of admiration, it radiates. People notice. They see the way you lift each other up, the way you face challenges as a team, the way you make each other better. It's like when SpaceX lands a booster back on Earth, people don't just see the rocket, they see what's possible when you believe in something bigger. In your relationship, this kind of love becomes a model, a proof that connection doesn't have to be shallow or fleeting. It shows the world that love can be a force, like innovation or courage, that changes everything it touches. Let's talk about how to make this practical, because I'm not here for fluffy theories, I'm about results. To turn these words into a legacy, you've got to keep evolving with them. Life changes, and so do people. The man you admire today might face new challenges tomorrow, a career shift, a personal loss, a dream that takes him in a new direction. Keep seeing him. Keep noticing the ways he grows, the ways he stays true to himself. Maybe 5 years from now, you'll say, I admire how you've learned to balance your ambition with being there for the people you love. Or maybe it's, I admire how you've never stopped dreaming, even when life tried to pull you back. The point is to stay curious, to keep finding new things to admire as he evolves, because that's what keeps your connection alive and growing. Here's another tip. Don't let the spark become a routine. I've seen too many relationships where people get comfortable, stop paying attention, and let the fire die out. It's like letting a rocket sit on the launch pad too long, eventually it rusts. Keep mixing it up. Sometimes say the words in a quiet moment, like when he's sharing a worry or a hope. Other times, write them in a letter he finds when he's not expecting it. I admire how you keep your heart open, even after everything you've been through. Or maybe it's a quick, heartfelt comment during a random Tuesday dinner. I love how you always find a way to make people feel valued. The variety keeps it fresh, keeps it real, and keeps it from feeling like a habit. It's like iterating on a design, every version builds on the last, making it better, stronger, more enduring. And here's the part that's just for you, ladies. Building this legacy isn't just about him, it's about who you become in the process. When you practice this kind of intentional, heartfelt admiration, you're not just strengthening your relationship, you're sharpening your own vision. You're learning to see people deeply, to find the beauty in their struggles, to connect on a level most never reach. That's a gift that goes beyond love. It's the kind of clarity I bring to solving problems, whether it's building a car or colonizing a planet. It's about seeing the truth and acting on it. When you bring that clarity to your relationship, You become a woman who doesn't just love but inspires, who doesn't just build a partnership but creates a legacy. Let's talk about the payoff, because I'm all about results that matter. When you make these words a part of your life together, you're not just creating memories, you're creating a foundation that can weather anything. Years from now, when you look back, you won't just remember the big moments, the trips, the milestones, the wins. You'll remember the quiet times when you saw each other's hearts, when you said, I admire something about you, and meant it with every fiber of your being. Those are the moments that define a legacy, the ones that make your love a story worth telling. And for a man, knowing he's got a partner who sees him, believes in him, and fights for him, that's worth more than any rocket, any company, any dream I've ever chased. So here's my final challenge to you. Don't just use these words, live them. Make them a part of how you see the world, how you show up for the people you care about. Keep finding new ways to admire him, to see the man he's becoming, to remind him he's enough. Do that, and you won't just have a relationship, you'll have a legacy. A love that doesn't just burn bright, but lights the way for everyone around you. A story that says, this is what happens when two people see each other, really see each other, and choose to build something extraordinary. That's the kind of love I believe in, one that's as bold, as enduring, and as unstoppable as a mission to the stars.